Hi, everyone. Welcome to Hot Seat with Cognizant Clay. I am your host, Clayton Terrio. Today on the show, we have Ben Fanelli. Ben is a former hockey player who played for the Kitchener Rangers of the OHL. While playing for them in 2009, he sustained a serious brain injury after a hit from behind. After 2 years of extensive rehab and testing, he was actually able to play again. Later on, he formed Headstrong for brain injury awareness as well as Heroic Minds. Heroic Minds takes ancient philosophical texts and converts them into modern day practices and uses. I hope you guys enjoy it. Well, first of all, man, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Oh my gosh, I'm honored, humbled to be a part of it. Seriously. So this is awesome.
Yeah, for sure. I've been listening to your podcast for a little bit. I just caught up a little bit. You got some good guests on there. It's pretty good.
Cool. Well, thank you. Yeah, no, who knows where it's going to go? In all honesty, I don't have a plan. It's just involve yourself with good people and good things should come of it. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, exactly. And that's just it. Just go for it and you never know who's going to say yes. I found
Yeah.
out the not I wouldn't say the hard way, but just I actually got Rick Mercer on the other week.
Nice.
It was incredible. Like it was I just shot him an email and he got back to me and said, "Let's do it." So there you go.
That is amazing. He was on my bucket list, so maybe I'll have to keep that in mind that I just got to take a chance and shoot an email out.
Yeah, I think he'd do it. I wouldn't hesitate on that.
So cool.
Yeah, so just to start off, during this whole COVID-19 quarantine, how are you doing?
I've been uncovering some skills I didn't know I had, to be honest. I'm actually also timing wise, I'm starting a master's program in counseling psychology. So I just started that literally yesterday. So getting back into the learning scholastically that I've been away from for so long. But besides that, which is an easy answer, I'd say I'm trying a bunch of new things, doing a little bit of woodworking that I'm not very good at, doing a little bit of cooking that I'm, usually not very good at, baking, sewing, hemming pants, just trying to do super tangible things that, I mean, quite honestly, we always have time for. We just don't make time for it. But this has been that call to action to be like, okay, pump the brakes and do some things that are tangible. They make you happy. You can feel them. It's not just electronics and social media. And it's been, I feel pretty good mentally. I mean, of course, there's things that are different and obviously aren't like they used to be. But I think embedded in that is another lesson. Like we don't know where this is going to go. Things might change forever, and to think that there's going to be the normal again, I put that in quotations. It I don't think I don't think that's realistic. I think that's kind of a unfortunate pipe dream to hold on to. Is that are we going to get back to that exact same normal? And we might not, but if you really think about it, we never have that same normal. And I think that's a healthy approach to accept. It's not easy, but to accept that things will always change. We may never, people say, oh, I feel like I'm 7 years old again or 12 years old again. And obviously, I mean, I would love to be back at Blake Clock. That feeling, the memory in my mind of what that felt like, the freedom and the excitement. Of course, we'd all love to go back to that, but I think it would be unhealthy to hold on the dream that, oh, I'm going to feel exactly like that again one day. It might not happen, but who knows? Something better might come of it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you and it's obviously quite different situations, but the things we've had to deal with, whether it's, a brain injury for you or the disability for me, I think we've learned that, as long as you think positive and you keep going and you don't try to attain or retain too much, then you're going to be good. And I think this has taught a lot of people that, yeah, it's hard for a lot of people, but at the same time, we have never had this scenario in our lives where you can do basically whatever you want as long as money allows you to do it. And I think I took a course. It's funny you say the learning stuff is I took a course in social media marketing and now I'm doing this. Like I don't think the opportunity would have been as easy as it has been. And that kind of brings me to the next. So for my guests who don't know, unfortunately in 2009, you sustained a serious brain injury as well as facial and skull fractures. which took 2 years for you to recover through tests and rehab. I just wanted to know, talk me through a little bit about that process and what it taught you.
For sure. It really does. I'm able to articulate things now uh, with more understanding, whether it's psychology, philosophy, etc. I can articulate things now that I didn't know I was going through then. So I think the one message is, before I get into that, and I won't get into too many details, it will be here all day. But the one message is you can be doing the right things without being able to articulate it. And people act in ways that are very heroic. And Europe, absolutely perfect prime example. I think now it seems like you would have the ability to articulate why you've made decisions, et cetera. But for those that don't, there's so many people that are doing incredible heroic things fueled in ways that are so perfect to be a resilient person, yet they don't even know how they got there. And I think that's magical in itself, is that you don't need the how-to books. You don't need all the life hack videos. You can just act and become such a powerful person. And at other times you're not as powerful. That's just the ebbs and flows of life. So in circling back on my story, it was interesting that I was really I thought I was fueled by the idea of when I was told I wasn't going to play again, and I was the only person that I knew in my life, sportscasters, everyone was saying I would never play again, and I was the only person that believed I would, and it's kind of like, okay, why is that? Because I could go into the nitty gritty and all the details, but the reality is that was what kept me going, is that there was this pipe dream, this idea that I could still play again, and that is what fueled me to work out twice a day, to push the envelope, to start with walking around the block as what the doctors would allow me to do, and then I'd have to have a nap and X, Y, and Z, and slowly build it up from there. I think the most important part of that whole journey to ultimately getting back to playing was this underlying willpower to one, prove people wrong. It really, when I peel back the layers and understand it with my ego at the time, I was told I was going to play in the NHL one day. I was still thinking that was a possibility. So it wasn't the hockey. The hockey was the tool or the medium to fulfill this ego. But I had such a desire to, one, prove people wrong, and two, prove to my mom that I was okay, because I knew in everything that was one of the biggest issues, was proving to my mom that I was okay so that I would be allowed to play again, but then also for her health, because I knew how much she disliked the game hockey. Her biggest nightmare came true, and I just wanted to prove to her that I was going to be okay so bad. And third, I wanted to prove to myself that I was healthy. I was scared that, the things the doctors told me in that room when I woke up was scary to hear, and I wanted to prove to myself that I was going to be okay. And so that's what drove me to do the things I needed to do. So again, it was a totally fight or flight response. And I decided to fight. It's such a deeper reason than hockey and becoming a hockey player for a living. Maybe that was part of it, but we got to peel back the layers and get to those deeper motivations, as you probably already know of. And when I was able to do that, I was then able to have this energy to kind of push the envelope and act in the face of adversity that some people may say, wow, how did he do that? It really is. And we people that like yourself, you peel back the layers and they're like, yeah, it's not that big a deal. I just did it. It was hard work, but I had reason to do it. And I'm actually happy through it, and all these different things. And people like yourself brush it off as if nothing happened. It wasn't anything impressive or fancy. For those reasons, there's such a deeper motivation inside you. And I just explained what mine were. That was fueling me to do things. And when you pair that with someone, I always say a human with a quiet mind and a deeper reason to do anything is human potential. You don't know what a human can do when you pair that with someone. So.
Yeah, I agree. And a lot of the people I look up to, you don't have to take on too much. Like I said before, as long as you have that quiet mind and that motivation to keep going, that's really all you need. Because a lot of people I've been watching a lot of your videos, and you say a lot of people won't do something unless they have incentive to do it. And that's usually material things. But I find if it's a better goal to, help people or even help one of your friends, that's enough incentive for me that you can use your situation to teach people. And the other thing I wanted to ask was during that whole recovery, who inspired you the most to keep going and stay positive?
That's awesome. Geez, I could talk with you all day. Who inspired me? So it's interesting. I was inspired almost, and I mean this in the most healthy way. I don't mean I had to do it because I felt bad. It was almost an obligation because of the support I had. It was, my mindset was kind of like, wait a second, I've got people, I go to Tim Hortons and they won't even let me pay for my coffee. They don't know who I am. I'm not a big hockey star. I played 6 games in the league. But people around town here, I'd go and try to buy a coffee and the barista would say, no, this one's on us. We want you to get better. We don't know if you'll play hockey again, but we want you to recover. And I'd go to the rink and I'd have 23 of my teammates supporting me, my head coach, my assistant coach, my agent, everyone in my life supporting me. So it was almost a really healthy obligation to stay motivated. So I was inspired by that. That situation was one piece of the puzzle where I sourced a lot of inspiration and motivation. Again, I don't know how to articulate that totally, but it was a really healthy obligation. And it was like, you know what, I can get up and work out twice today. I can move back with the team and go on road trips and fill water bottles and do what I need to because of this group supporting me that believes I can do it. An individual at the time and still a massive, he's still my top 3 people if I could meet any people in the world in my lifetime, Lance Armstrong. I was lucky enough to meet him actually in 2010, which was outstanding, and bike beside him, which was cool. But in his book, there was one specific line. His book's really cool. It's interesting. It's powerful. But the one line was that when he was first diagnosed with cancer, he got on his bike and started riding, even though it hurt so much. And his self-talk was that he was going to work so hard. And I'm not saying this is a healthy mindset by any stretch, because it does a little bit contradict what I speak on today. But at the time, it was that he was going to work so hard or train so hard that he was going to scare the cancer out of his body. He was going to work the cancer completely out of his body. And so I took that concept and shifted it a bit. So there wasn't, back in 2009, concussion was very much a bump on the head. Was there great research that's out there? There was in 2009 when I sustained my injury, but there wasn't the vast amount of resources for concussion that there is today. It's come so far, which is fantastic. So I adopted that concept in saying, I'm going to do so many different things that the internet says or the doctors are saying is good for neurological health, that I'm going to force my brain to heal. I don't have to get anything out of my body, but I'm going to force my brain to heal. And that's the approach I took with everything: what I was eating, how I was sleeping, how I was training, how I was dealing with people, how stressed I was doing everything that academia, I guess, at the time was saying about neurological health. So that was, I'd say Lance Armstrong there was a bit of a guiding light in okay, what's going to be my approach to overcoming this?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's a prime example of someone who overcame some deep stuff, which is quite extensive. Man, like I couldn't imagine you or his story. Like it's probably some days you just want to give up, but you tell yourself, no, I'm not giving up. I'm going to keep pushing no matter how much it hurts or how tired I am. And so after that 2 years of extensive testing and rehab, you were actually able to get back on the ice, and you were even the captain of the Kitchener Rangers. What was your favorite part about being a captain?
So we were the youngest team in the league when I was the captain. So in a league that is one, and I'm not, this is going to come off wrong, I'm not trying to pump my tires, in what people arguably say is one of the best not under professional hockey leagues in the world, the best junior hockey league in the world. You do have players from all over the world. So to be the youngest team in one of the best leagues in the world, knowing that, okay, what are our chances of beating these top teams right now, with other teams that have 8 or 9 guys that are about to step into the NHL in the next year, which is all part of the game and all part of how the junior hockey league works. It was okay. There's got to be another opportunity here then. Like, yeah, we're going to try and win every single night, 100%. We try to put a show on for the fans. But in looking around the room and seeing the young guys that you have the opportunity to influence I took that as a huge opportunity. I was so involved in a community because of what I went through. And I realized how the community does give back, even to this day, how I can still be involved in this community, even though I'm 5 years out of playing. So the ability to teach the young guys those values in life. And when we went out into the community, how to approach other people in the community, individuals, how to carry yourself, how to dress accordingly so that you look like a professional and you look clean cut, and you're giving back to the community that, I mean, inevitably is the one supporting you. They're paying to come to these games. There's really not that many other revenue streams. It's the people that come and support you. So I think that we made a big impact that way. In my final year with the young guys I was lucky enough to play with, so that was I would say is pretty cool. I mean, on the hockey side, obviously a very, very humbling experience. If you look at the list of names, also to wear the C in Kitchener, obviously very humbling. So that's really, really cool. But I think more from the tangible side was just the opportunity you have as the captain to influence and then also learn, right? You make mistakes.
Yeah.
That's the truth, if anything. So to learn how to lead, when to be outwardly, when to not, when to speak up, when not to, when to lead by example, when to lead with your vocals, etc. So it was a lot of learning that way. Definitely a big part of my development as a person.
For sure. And I remember, well, I'm sure you remember when Evan's like one of my stepdad's friends' kids, and I had gone to the game. I met you, I met John Gibson and a bunch of others, and that group, there was something about that group that they were so mature beyond their years, like Frankie Corrado, John Gibson, Evan McEnany, like Landeskog had left to guy's exceptional. He was already in the NHL at that time, which is phenomenal in itself. Ryan Murphy, like I could go on and on about the people I met there, and it was incredible. Like I think Steve Spott and you really took that initiative to, you know what, this is a young team, but we're going to show you guys that, just because we're the youngest doesn't mean we're the worst team in the league. And I think that really was quite the statement. Like going to that game, the OHL almost feels like professional hockey. Like it's just so high quality that I was very grateful that I had the opportunity, because I had never really been to an OHL game before. And to see such an exceptional building and team working together was quite motivating for me personally.
Yeah, like I think the OHL's it's outstanding on so many different levels. Obviously the community involvement, but you get a slice of professionalism and playing professional hockey. I mean, there's I know guys, I can't say I've been at both sides of the coin, but I've definitely seen a lot of the professional side of hockey. And depending on, I think a lot of the organizations in the OHL, if not all of them, do everything they can with the resources they have. Money can be a restrictor at some points. But I mean, I hear stories all over the league of things they do. It's just like the NHL. I mean, are the equipment to the fans, to how you're treated, to the opportunities you're given, to how you're coached is all very similar. And also in the markets that, the Londons, the Kitcheners, the Windsors, when you get to play in front of over, 6,000 people and up, after that, I think it's pretty similar to the big leagues. And again, I've never been there, so there obviously are some things that someone might think, there's some differences in pro. You definitely get a taste of it though, and that's really cool for those that obviously don't get to go on and play in the big league. So I feel extremely lucky and blessed to have had that taste.
Yeah, and some of the names that come out of the OHL are just phenomenal. Like it's quite incredible. So during
Yeah.
that time in March 2011, you founded Headstrong, which is called Headstrong Fanelli for brain injury. Is the full brain injury awareness is the full thing, and that was to help raise funds for the Brain Injury Association of Canada. What kinds of initiatives did you take during that time?
Yeah, so it was interesting. I mean, that did turn into the Empower Foundation that became a registered nonprofit that's on a bit of a I wouldn't say hiatus, a bit of a pause right now as life's quite fast and we're navigating the landscape of things. So I haven't been putting as much work into that as of late as everything else in my life is taking off. Um, It was very simple. It was very, very simple. It was me going to elementary schools, talking to young kids about my story. So a bit of the resilience talk, and then also the importance of literally head injury awareness. That's, when you bump your head, wearing a helmet when you're on a bike, the list goes on. And the importance of taking note of that and the key is actually having education beforehand, right? Are we going to stop every injury that happens? No, that's not realistic. But what if we had the tools in place, the education in place, and knowledge that if something does happen, okay, now I know how to act. I know what to do. And for an invisible injury, well, from the human eye, invisible injury, it's important to have those conversations, no different than the mental health talks that we hear very much today. So that's all it was. It was going to schools and sharing, and the feedback was awesome. Turned into something bigger. Again, it's on pause right now, but we'll see where we can take it. There's just, the thing is, it's such a competitive field now, which is the best thing it could be, is there's researchers, schools, nonprofits, you name it, all over the world realizing the importance of this head injury thing, and it's competitive, and you have to be on the ball. You have to have a model that creates sustainable revenue to do the work you need to do to push the envelope, because there's people everywhere doing incredible things in head injury research, and it's fantastic.
Yeah, it really is. Like even Spit and Chicklets podcast, they do their little bit about it, and so many players that at the highest level and the junior level have experience. But I think the one thing that strikes me is just how, well, like you say, competitive, but how many different organizations and initiatives that have been taken as a result. Like it's just taken off over the last, I'd say 20 years or so. Like you look at Paul Correa is probably one of the, in my lifetime, one of the founders, if you will, of those initiatives. And since then, it seems like every day when sports are on, I mean, it's kind of hard right now with everything on pause, but it seems like every day you see some kind of story that really inspires that. And so just to lead into that, before I talk about Heroic Minds, you took communication and media studies at Laurier, and then eventually you majored in psychology and got your master's from Yorkville. What intrigued you so much about psychology that made you want to follow it educationally and then eventually as a career?
I think the truth is I wanted to, and this goes into a whole different story that we won't dive into on this conversation today, but the identity issue that exists in sports. So when I was pushing things aside because I was told I was going to play in the NHL one day, and I was 16 and naive, or even till 18, naive and young, and thought, okay, it's time to just focus on hockey. So I did what I needed to in school to get by, to get the 75 that I needed to keep, a generally good mark, good average. And then it was, okay, enough with the books. It's on to practicing hockey. And it seems like now it's making up for lost time. I'm reading and learning as much as I can, and I just have a thirst for knowledge in a lot of different things, but I think specifically this topic. So the truth is I started in psychology in university and then stepped out of it because I didn't think I was smart enough, and I didn't think I had the time to ultimately be smart enough, if that even makes sense, to pursue psychology as an undergrad. So I stopped chasing that dream. And now I have the opportunity to. It's kind of like, okay, now let's do this for real. Let's go to school and really truly enjoy what I'm studying. I didn't necessarily have that. I had the select classes that were, professors were awesome and the course was awesome, but generally speaking, not totally that proud of my degree. And now I have the opportunity to do a degree of something I'm absolutely obsessed with and cannot wait to graduate, to actually apply it in practice. So yeah, I guess that's the full story in a nutshell.
Yeah, that was pretty good, quick, short and sweet summarization. So, and then we move on to Heroic Minds, which you started in 2018. And I'll just go over the motto here a little bit. It takes science,
Yep.
philosophy, and ancient wisdom, which applies it to modern day context to be the best, highest performing person you can be. What what inspired you the most to start Heroic Minds as a business venture?
Reflecting back on that identity crisis, that was actually where things, if I'm being honest, stemmed from, is I didn't know what I was going to do when I finished playing hockey. I didn't know what I enjoyed. I didn't really know what I was good at. So the one thing I did know was that I wanted to one day do something that puts food on my table, but then also positively impacts other people. I was trying a bunch of different social ventures, nonprofits, with some of my own business models, my own businesses even. I would say a lot of those that didn't work out, which was most of them out of the gates, a lot of those were what I call my business degree. You know, I didn't pay to go to school for a business degree or a master's in business. So the time spent and the little bit of money lost in those social ventures, I would chalk up as okay, that's my business degree, is all the mistakes I made, all the meetings I had, all the learnings. So I that's the truth. I finished playing. I was trying a bunch of different businesses that did exactly what I wanted, give back and put food on my table. And some of them were pretty good. Some of them not so good. Some of them were okay, but just I wasn't going to pursue it long term. But again, a great experience and did make some impact. And then one of my best buddies said to me, "Why don't you start a podcast?" He said, "You love speaking and you love helping people work through problems. Why don't you try and pair those two things together?" So in all honesty, that's how it came to be. And then it went from a hobby. I started throwing things at the wall, see what sticks, see what people enjoy. And then I've done 86 episodes. I'd say maybe at episode 50, 55, in that time span, I was able to take a story or figure out a story sorry, is it loud? Is it loud in the background at all?
No, no.
Okay, good. So in that time span, I was able to finally pull a message out of the podcast because I knew there was something consistent across all of these conversations. Across every single conversation, it didn't matter who it was, what age they were, what they went through, or maybe they didn't go through something. They're just a researcher trying to change the world in some way. The reality is there's a consistency across every single one of them, and I was finally able to put my finger on and articulate exactly what that is. And I mean, if that's what we can go into next, I can unpack that. But that's basically become Heroic Minds. It's now it's the podcast. It is public speaking. It's workshops. It's sharing this message and applying it in different ways in sports teams and consulting, in business. And it's been a lot of fun to now really build on this main concept that is the foundation of Heroic Minds.
Yeah, and it's good for you. I really enjoy it, and I think a lot of people could learn something from it. So thank you for sharing your message.
Yeah. I mean, okay, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say that what that message is and what Heroic Minds is built on, quite simply, is just using your brain the way it was supposed to be used and leveraging. That's when we can leverage the full capability of our mind. There's so many different examples I could give you, but one perfect example is an attachment to the materialistic things we have today. So is that a huge complex issue? For sure it is. But if you really take a step back, simply is we get in our own way by chasing things we think will make us happy. But then again, if you go back to how our brain has evolved and what actually makes it happy as a biological thing, no different than any other animal, what stimulates it, what doesn't, what is long-term, what's a short-term stimulation. I mean, we get in our own way by chasing these fabricated ideas of happiness, not the true ideas of happiness. So that's one very simple example. The other side of Heroic Minds is understanding how the brain works. Right? Trying to unpack the idea of 5 a.m. wake-up call, and you've heard me say this probably many times, is when we wake up at 5 a.m. and it's minus 30 outside, why does one part of our mind say, okay, let's go, we have things to do, let's hop out of bed, let's get after it, yet another part of our mind is telling us how warm and cozy and safe the bed is, so it's so difficult to get out of bed, right? So, unpacking that whole idea, well, how are we really motivated as human beings? Is it these, like I was saying with my hockey story, is it these rational concepts of money and cars, and is that how we're really motivated sustainably, or is it something deeper that we have to unpack, which makes it so difficult to get out of bed at 5 a.m.? So it's navigating that and then peeling back the layers. Okay, if something is so difficult for me, why is that difficult? And instead of adding more, which is the common narrative today in life, is, just download the next app, that'll help you. Just download the next thing, just read the next book and do more and more and more. It's very much the opposite, is how can we add less, peel back some crap we don't need, and then, as the saying goes, is then leverage the full capability of our mind. So Yeah, I'll keep it short and sweet for the sake of time, but that's how I can squeeze it into a short synopsis.
Yeah, and for sure, and it is quite an extensive and rooted genre or area of thinking, but it's very fascinating, and I think as we learn more and more, it is easier to put into layman's terms, I guess, for lack of a better word, and it's really quite amazing. The other thing, just to dive a little deeper, was what are your top priorities with Heroic Minds?
So I'd say my top priority, there's a few, and it's a really good question, actually. It's a good exercise for me because one of my problems is I'm so constantly looking for opportunity, even when times are tough, as you do as well, that it's just kind of like, I see too many opportunities. I want to pursue everything, but I don't want to be good at everything and the master of none kind of approach. I want to be the best at one or two things. And so I'm working on that right now. But I would say my biggest priority is building out and which may, it's still occurring even though we're in this lull, I guess you could say, navigating what life's going to be like, talks in person versus virtual talks online. So I really want to grow out the talks that I do. I love getting in front of audiences, obviously in sport, but even cooler for me is audiences outside of sport. And that's kind of an ego thing, is proving to myself that, hey, I can have value outside of sport. So to get into these different businesses I've been lucky enough to talking about topics I never believed I was smart enough to talk about is really cool. So that's one thing, is build out this curriculum and presentation, and then at the same time continue to grow it and allow it to evolve. I never want to give the exact same presentation twice. I never have. I always tailor it to the audience. I'll change something. I'll change a slide and bring in a new idea. I never want to give the same presentation. Then the other side is Heroic Apparel that I've started, which is they always say in business is, if you're going to try something new, look for a hole in the market. Look where something's not being met. Look where there's an issue. Look where you can. And so I looked at the athletic apparel world and thought that and I won't go into details on it, but I found a couple holes, and I've created a company called Heroic, which is Heroic Apparel. It's affordable prices, but more importantly, it's a message that talks about, instead of self-serving, which is very much the sporting world, do whatever you need to do to get ahead. Do whatever you need to do to win. Imagine, because ironically, every coach wants the opposite. Every coach wants a player that will do anything for the team to ultimately win, because when the team wins, the individual wins and vice versa. So imagine that was a company that you saw in locker rooms everywhere, that it wasn't self-serving. It was actually selfless. It was that my success is our success. Our success is my success. So in everything I do in the community, with my family, with my partner, etc., is acting in a way that, I'm not saying everyone needs to be a Bible thumper by any stretch, or a perfectly behaved person. That's not it at all. It's a very modern approach to, okay, life's fast. There's a lot of things we can get hooked to, some bad habits, etc. We're not perfect, but in everything I do and every challenge I face as an individual or as a team, I'm going to look for the opportunity to be a hero for as many people as I can around me, right? And that's the message. Is, imagine that's what filled sporting rooms and locker rooms. A lot of the issues that exist in sport, which I know them because I've seen them and I'm involved in it. Imagine we could get rid of those issues purely by the culture that we've built, as opposed to needing to bring professionals in and needing to give players individual support. Imagine the culture shifted and changed that on its own. And I'd say it's possible, and we see that it's possible. I know it's possible because I've seen the hockey world shift. And everyone says, well, why is hockey why are there less instances of concussion? Why all of a sudden, are the, generally speaking, and obviously it's a high risk, high paced game, and head injuries will continue to happen. I get that. But in a lot of ways, they've decreased. And if you look at how the game's changed, everyone says, well, what changed it? Well, did they change the equipment? Not really. They did change the massive elbow covers they used to have that were like little weapons. Yeah, they changed that, but everyone's still wearing unbelievably strong equipment that you can still do the same type of things, but the culture has changed on its own. And if I take a step back and look at how that has changed in the sporting world, of a very macho, put that in quotations, macho identity sport, it changed on its own because of the culture. And I have best friends that are there, and I ask them, what has changed? And their answer is exactly like this. I want to play this game as long as I can. I want to do as well as I can in this sport. So if I go out and want to hurt someone, I know I'm going to get it in return. I also don't want to hurt them because I'm in the same shoes as them. I want to play this game as long as I can. So I want them to play the game as long as they can so that it's better for the game. And so, I mean, that's just one side of it. There's so many other sides where this whole, the game of hockey, I've seen it shift. I've seen it change. So to say that we can't fix the other issues that may be off ice, maybe different, you know, the identity issue, the post-career issue, so on and so forth, that we can make that change as well without doing anything life-changing. Nothing life-changing or drastic has happened in hockey. It's changed itself. And I'm a big believer that we can do that in locker rooms and with teams around, I'm hoping around the world. I mean, it's going to start here in the Kitchener-Waterloo area as I hopefully connect with more teams and I'm able to have these kids wearing a product with a story so powerful that they start to identify with it and be these people that are selfless. So long-winded answer, but those are the two things: is build out the consulting and the speaking, and then also grow the athletic apparel side as well as the message that comes with it.
Yeah, no, long-winded, but very informative and very interesting and intricate, actually. But that's one thing that brought me to, like, that gave me the idea to interview you was we both have the same kind of common goal, and that's to help people. It's not about the number of viewers. It's not about the number of likes. What it's about is teaching as many people as possible that, there is hope for several aspects of life. And I think that's I think we're both prime examples. I hate to sound like I'm pumping my own tires too, but
You should. I love it.
it's awareness, and it's very important. So I have a little segment here called Rapid Fire that I do with all my guests. I kind of go away from the questions a little bit, just to get some interest going. So growing up in Ontario, and this is always a hard one I find for guests, who is your favorite person from Ontario?
My favorite person from Ontario? Yeah, I guess I'd have to actually know. So an easy answer would be my grandfather, but then I have to go and explain a story, and that's too much. So I will say from Ontario, favorite person from Ontario. You know what? Growing up, because I didn't really know what the OHL was, but someone from Ontario that I looked up to and still do today because of how they carry themselves. They seem so simple, and they're selfless and just seems like such a good person for where they are, is actually John Tavares, who's a fellow Oakville native that, to be honest, I've been on the ice with him, but I've never actually met him. So I would say John Tavares.
Great answer. I like it. He's so reserved too. You say having a quiet mind. He seems like someone that's really focused on what he wants to do and doesn't let too much get in his head, which is
huge. It appears to be. Yeah.
Yeah. What is your favorite thing to eat?
That's a long list. I would say it would go. But can they be together? Because pizza has so many different things on it. So does that count, or does it have to be one? Okay, because I was going to say cheese. If I had to, I would break it down and say cheese. But pizza and burgers. I have a really guilty pleasure for I'd say couple months is a trip to the old Golden Arches McDonald's, and I shouldn't be releasing this on air, but I'll just absolutely dive into a couple Big Macs. I get my fix and then see you in 2 or 3 months, but that's definitely pizza first, and then that'd be another one.
There's nothing wrong with that. Moderation is key.
Exactly. That's what I tell myself.
If you could be any athlete, living or dead, for one day, who would you pick?
Michael Phelps.
Oh, wow. Fascinating answer. That's a good one. I like that. As a hockey background person, what would be your favorite hockey cliche?
Holy smokes, the amount of cliches that just popped into my head. I mean, for the boys is the lowest hanging fruit so that one's too easy. The cliche in hockey. Pucks to the net.
Yeah.
Everyone says that in every interview. I don't know if that'll ever get old. Pucks to the net, pucks to the net. It's like, come on. Like, even in interviews on TV, went back in the day when I was doing that, tried to articulate a little more than that. Like, that's the most obvious thing. Like, that is the goal of the entire game, is to get a puck into the net. So could we expand beyond that? But we'll see.
And last but not least, and you don't have to go into huge detail, but I'm just curious, what would be your funniest sports memory?
Funniest sports memory. It happened while I was here in Kitchener. I'm trying to think of a funny sports memory that happened specifically while I was playing. I mean, one memory was when I was just moved in with my billet family, and we went to do hot yoga as a team builder. So myself and a fellow teammate named Ben Thompson, who's playing in the American League now. He's played in the NHL a little bit. Awesome guy, amazing guy, one of my best friends. We lived across the street from each other. So he came over to make lunch. Dinner. We were gonna do dinner, and then we were gonna head to hot yoga as a team builder. And so we were making dinner. We put fries in the oven, made the rest of the dinner, ate the dinner, forgot. We had no idea. We forgot that we left the fries in the oven in my billet mom's kitchen, and we left to hot yoga. Not a word of a lie, on the way home from hot yoga, we didn't bring a change of clothes because obviously we're 16 years old. We're not thinking that far ahead. So I was in his car in boxers because it was so hot from yoga that I was just like, I can't go in the car in soaking wet clothes. So I'm in his car in boxers, and then he gets rear-ended. This sounds made up, but it's a true story. So he gets rear-ended in the car, and he didn't want to get out of the car in his boxers, so I had to get out of the car. So I'm like trying to cover my body in the middle of the road, talking to this person, like my clothes were in the trunk, so I couldn't go get them. So I'm like, hey, like trying to talk as quick as I can. Hey, sorry, let's exchange information, blah, blah, blah. We do all that. We get back in the car. And I thought that was absolutely insane and so rude of me to get out of the car in boxers. Anyway, so we deal with that. Then we get back to my billet house, and my billet mom is waiting at the door for me. And she's absolutely unbelievable. So she wasn't like furious, angry, but almost laughable, upset, because she said she came home from work and the house was absolutely full of black smoke and was worried the house was actually on fire. Turns out it was our McCain French fries that were toasty black in the oven, so they had to air the house out. Luckily, it didn't last. The scent in the house didn't last, and I was welcomed back into the house for 4 more years. So pretty much 5. So yeah, that was my funniest story. Part of sport, wasn't actually in sport, but that was an early experience with my unbelievable billet family.
That's a good one. That's crazy. Could not imagine. Just in boxers. Yeah, sorry about the accident.
Yeah.
Are now. Like,
Oh yeah, it was awkward to say the least.
so just back into the questions a bit. So apart from the brain injury awareness and heroic minds and all that jazz, so to speak, what other advocacy and awareness causes or charities do you support?
One other one that I do a little bit. I would say I put so much time into those other ones that you just mentioned that I'd say another one that I like to be involved in is cystic fibrosis, for a couple of reasons, but mainly 2 people that I know quite well. One, his siblings were passed away from cystic fibrosis, and he does a ton of work around here. Mike Farwell is his name. He's absolutely unbelievable. And then a young woman around here who actually I played against her now husband, Mike Moffat. He was the captain in Kingston, and I know Mike well through the hockey world and coached him a little bit at the University of Waterloo and got to know his wife, Amber, who I also had on my podcast, telling her story about living life with cystic fibrosis. And she's just like if you look at the term hero and the philosophy and theology behind it, she's totally a hero and living it truly every day. She says that if people in the past with cystic fibrosis didn't do what they did, she wouldn't be here today. So now it's her job to do everything she can for cystic fibrosis for those that are born with CF in the future. And I'll never forget that quote. It's one of the most powerful things I've ever heard. And the fact that I got to hear it from her in person and share it with other people is pretty cool. So cystic fibrosis is a cause I'd like to get behind as well.
Yeah, for sure. And that is a rough one. Like it's such a crazy disability. It's a disability, I guess, to the biggest extent of the word. And it's I've done some work with them in the past. Like I was Easter seals, so it was like
Okay.
cystic fibrosis, muscular dystrophy, like those really tough hands to be dealt. And I think it's really good to support those and raise that awareness. And I might check those two people out, actually. That'd be a great two people to interview.
Totally. I'm pretty sure they'd be happy to if you can. They're busy people. Mike a little more maybe than Amber with all his interviews and stuff, but I could connect you with them for sure.
Awesome. Good to hear. Yeah, for sure. So other than that, what advice would you give to someone who has survived a serious brain injury such as yours?
That's a good question. There's so many approaches to take. I would say that, especially an episode I did with a brain surgeon, he would say that, and this is someone that understands the brain, has seen it, has touched it, has done probably the most you could with a human brain, living or not. And he even told me stories where he had taken parts, for what we know so far, certain parts of the brain help with certain things. And he had scientifically had taken parts of someone's brain out that would mean, if you look at academia, they shouldn't be able to do certain things, yet they were still able to. So just similar to the video that I just posted about the awe of things we can't understand, these concepts that are so much bigger than us, we can't comprehend them. I would say that's something to keep in mind, and that's what I kept in mind. And okay, let's see how far we can push the envelope with the not neuroanatomy, but plasticity and resilience of the brain. So to hear a brain surgeon say that was pretty fascinating. And so I'd say that's the message: is we don't, even the best people in the world don't know exactly how resilient truly every single person's brain could be. So why not push the envelope? Why not try everything? Why not see how much we can recover and get back to, or not back to normal, but to this new normal that will work for us and allow us to do whatever it is we want to do.
Yeah, it's so fascinating. Like you say, it's what drives us. But I think you saying the awe of the things we don't understand, that is really, I think a lot of people are interested in that, because mysteries are so, like, you could talk all day about what you think the brain can do and can't do. Like, I've even had conversations with my friends, like, what about all the ancient cultures that were able to do more than we can? Well, that's what we're trying to learn. And I think there's, like you say, there's going to be more and more coming out that we realize that we're able to tap into with the proper awareness and education, for sure.
I couldn't agree more.
And so obviously during this time, it's a little hard for people to manage and to keep their message going. But how do you think people can continue to raise awareness and advocacy for the causes they support?
Well, I'll quote Amber again. She always says, a lot of people will tailor their message and think and overthink and make sure that they're delivering their message exactly how they want to. It's perfectly worded and it's going to get across the exact point that they want to get across to their audience. And she said most times, well, not most times, but a lot of times, people will take something from your story you haven't even thought of, or they'll hear you tell your story in a way that you haven't even thought of. They'll hear it and it'll affect them in a way maybe even more powerful than you initially thought. So I think a lot of the issues with people waiting to share their story, and I've met many people that have come up to me after and said, hey, I want to share my story. I want to figure out how I can do this. It's really about just getting it out there. And I think one thing we miss out on is authenticity. Is people just speaking without a filter on, without editing their image, without a script, is just speaking from the heart. And I think we really enjoy that and appreciate that. I've seen it in presentations I've done with 5 or 6 people on stage that don't know each other, and they're the best presentations I've ever done, because they're just okay, you know what, for the next hour, just be you and say what comes to mind and be honest. And the audience is absolutely glued to it because it's real, it's honest. And so that would be my message to people: is don't overthink how you have to deliver it. Do I have to do a perfect video? No. Do I have to be in person? No. get it out there, and it'll affect people in ways you haven't even planned for.
Exactly, and I think you hit the nail on the head there with quality. People think quality means 4K. No, that's
Yeah.
not what we mean. What we mean is authentic and organic, and that's one thing I went through this is I was so scared that people wouldn't like it, but that I think is a very human thing. And then I realized, well, you know what? People have gravitated to me for some reason. And like you say, it's hard to articulate that at the forefront. But as I've started doing this, I've realized, you know what? So many people are willing to talk to you and share their story because that's what life is all about, I think, is perspective. And that's one major force that has driven me is you know what? Your story is powerful. Like you say about your podcast, it doesn't matter what you've been through. You have something to offer to everybody, and it's just about finding it. And I think that's very important to know that.
Totally. I think your point about perspective is so important, and I'm just learning about this right now in a book I'm reading. Like perspective is massive because we only have our own perspective of things. And so our opinion of things is affected by the years we've been alive, the experiences we've had, all packaged up. So whenever we see something, our brain is, before we've even comprehended or taken into consideration what we're looking at, who we're talking to, our brain as a defense mechanism is just taking into account as many instances as it can, to understand what it's seeing. So it's trying to predict ahead of time what someone's like, the safety or unsafety of a situation, and it's trying to predict all that at once. And so to get another perspective outside of our own that we're stuck in, you can't just, it's not that easy to just jump out of your perspective, and that's where empathy is such a big thing. To have other perspectives and hear other stories is literally, I think there's no better way to explain adding more tools to your toolbox. To have other perspective, to hear things from other people and think about things in other ways, I think is so important. And at the end of the day, it's just going to help you, the individual, that much more.
Exactly. And I think that's major. Well, that's about all I have for you, Ben. Thank you again for doing this. This has been really awesome. I'm glad you took the time to do this.
Oh, thank you. This has been absolutely fantastic. And reach out with anything else. Obviously, I've always got time for you. So you let me know, and I look forward to sharing this as well.
Yeah, for sure. I'll let you know when it's up for sure.
Fantastic. All right. Well, be well, be safe, and we'll chat soon, I'm sure.